What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Nick Bartell, editor-in-chief for Technowarriors TV, and welcome to an exciting author interview. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to have the world-renowned UFO guy, the Big Kahuna, John Ventre. He was featured in the host on History Channel's Hangar 1, which is actually about the Mutual UFO Network. And MUFON is a big, huge world organization, UFO organization. They've been doing stuff since 1969. They investigate UFOs, alien abductions, and everything with that realm of nature. Also, he is also a author. He has 10 books that he's written and published, and you'll be able to find everything in the link in the description below. Also, he's done other TV shows about UFOs and that kind of thing, but really his main feature was MUFON's Hangar 1. And Chase Kolensky, big shout out to you. Big shout out to you, Jesse Peak. A big shout out to Brian Lindley, and a big shout out to Gray Earl Anderson, the Mutual UFO Director for Southern California. And a big shout out to everyone at MUFON for their amazing support. It is absolutely amazing. I also like to give a big, awesome shout out to one of my extremely good friends, Carl Scales, and Riker and Ezra. Without further ado, that completes our fan shout out. And ladies and gentlemen, let's cut into the cake. It is time for the author interview of the world famous John Ventre. I am so excited to have him on the show. Oh my God, I've been waiting for this so long. I've been a really big fan of his. I've seen a bunch of his YouTube stuff. I've seen him in Hangar 1, which I'm a huge fan of, and I'm a huge fan of the Mutual UFO Network. Ladies and gentlemen, MUFON is a staple of our channel, with Linda Thompson's interview coming in at 6.8k views, and Chis Kowalski breaking the first one break to 2k views, and also Jesse Peaks at 5.7k views. I mean, it is absolutely phenomenal, the support we're getting in the UFO community. Russ Kellett, big shout out to you as well. 5.3k views and almost 1,800 likes, which is phenomenal for an abductee interview. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be another big, huge interview. Without further ado, I'm going to shut my trap and take it away, John Ventre.
Yeah, well, thanks, Nick, for having me on. We've talked for a couple of weeks. I will say this about myself. I am a renegade in most everything I do, whether it's political here in Pennsylvania. I ran for governor 3 years ago and county commissioner. And, I do what I believe is right. I don't play politics. I didn't do that in MUFON or the UFO field. And we're going to talk about the books I've written. But if I believe something, I'm going to say it, even though it goes against mainstream, whether it's political, UFOs, or no matter what it is. But I first want to say, Nick, and I just thought about this over the weekend, Saturday, this is the 15th anniversary of the huge investigation in across Pennsylvania that ended up in Bucks County that put me on Discovery Channel, UFOs Over the Earth. I just thought about that. I can't believe 2008. We filmed that TV series in July, August, September, and it aired in November of 2008. So it's the 15th anniversary. And that is really what jump-started me. I was the PA state director at that point, after about 9 years of being a MUFON investigator. And I think I became in 2006 the state director. So 2008 is boom, all of a sudden we got this huge investigation. Maybe we'll talk about that on a different show, but it just occurred to me that this is actually the 15th anniversary, and that was such a cool investigation. But let me step back now and tell you about my books, and there's a little bit of backstory on every one of them, which is, I think, which is what's going to make this podcast cool. is that you hear stuff you're not going to read in the book, let's say. So, the first book I wrote was on the Mayan calendar. This one here, 12/21/2012, a prophecy. You see a flooded version of the United States, right? Now, it's interesting. I created that map. Even though I paid Dorrance Publishing for all this stuff, I actually bought a map of rivers in the United States. I took it, and with a blue, marker, I expanded every river, every lake to be a flooded version. And even though, let's say, the Bible says we will never be destroyed by flood again, I still wrote the Mayan calendar book that way. But the way I started this book was I had all these ideas, and I was working at UPS. And for 18 months, they had me traveling in 1995 and 1996 all around the country. So one night I'm in Boynton Beach, Florida, and I walked down to the front desk. I said, give me a couple pieces of paper. I went up to my room and I just started jotting all my ideas down, because back then you're still doing things on paper and floppy disks, and I started writing my book, and what's really interesting is there are probably, I published it in June 27th of 07. So I started it in 1996. Took me 11 years to write this book, because if you've never written and published something, you'll know what you're doing. I actually dropped it after about 80 pages of writing, and then the 2012 movie came out, or no, The Day After Tomorrow. And I said, my God, all the ideas in my book are in this movie, The Day After Tomorrow, right? And I tell you something very interesting. I sent my 80-page manuscript to 3 ghostwriters. One of them was associated with Whitley Strieber and in upstate New York. And, it was Whitley Strieber who wrote the Day After Tomorrow script. And I've always wondered, did he get a hold of my book and use my ideas? Because there was this stuff in the movie that was, so I got determined and I finished it. But I tell you one thing, there are about a dozen things in the book. I set the world up in the year 2012, in the future at the time. And there was about a dozen things that I put in the book that came true. For example, I cut this out. This TV show, Switched at Birth, came on the air in 2011. Now, if you go to my book, the character in my book is watching his favorite TV show, Switched at Birth. And I published this book in 07. So I got that right. Matter of fact, my friends would say to me, John, you got so many things in this book that actually came true over the next 5 or 10 years. It's actually incredible. But it was my research into end-time prophecy in different cultures that got me into the UFO field. What happened was, I'm like 40 years old at this point, 41. I know nothing about UFOs. I'm a Comic-Con, Famous Monsters of Filmland fan, go to Horror Fest. I didn't know one thing about UFOs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is I'm doing my research and I keep coming across these cultures, and they're talking about gaining knowledge from people from the stars, people on flying shields. That's the way they describe them. And I said, there's something to this UFO thing. And at the time in 93, my 2 favorite shows were X-Files when they came on Fox and Sightings. I love both of those shows. I actually like Sightings, I think, better than X-Files. But I said, you know what? Whenever they talked about UFOs, they would talk about these MUFON people. I said, I'm going to join that MUFON thing, whatever it is. And I joined in 98. And I wanted to do research into UFOs. So that's what basically got me into the UFO field. But let me tell you about the second book. You see the same cover, but it says The Day After 2012, right? So what happened with this book, and I published it, I think, in 2011, March 11th of 2011. I'm doing this whole Mayan thing. I was traveling all around the country doing lectures. I was considered an expert on the Mayan calendar and end time prophecy. And I went all over the country, Florida, Vegas, all over, talking about really possibilities of of the end times. And somebody at, I think, my Philadelphia MUFON conference said, "What are you going to do when nothing happens on 12/21/2012?" And I said, real quickly, it popped in my head. I said, "Well, I'm going to publish the day after 2012." And I thought about it afterwards. I said, you know what? That's a good idea. That became my second book, is what happens after 2012. And it's only like 100 pages. So I wrote this book the day after 2012. So that was really how I got started in all of this. I became an expert. And, it's interesting. People have said to me, have you ever been followed by Men in Black, the CIA, any trouble? I've done probably 200 podcasts, radio interviews, that type of stuff. And do you know, the only time I had any issues was when I talked about the Yellowstone supervolcano. I don't know if you know who Kevin Smith is. He passed away. Big radio show out of Arizona. And twice on his show, when we were talking about end time prophecy and Yellowstone, his signal almost got taken down, because he called me afterwards. "John, somebody tried to take the signal down when you're talking about the Yellowstone supervolcano." On another show, it did get taken down. We had to call back in. And then another time, and this wasn't that long ago, maybe 5 years ago, we're discussing it, and right over my head at like midnight, there's a helicopter hovering. And the guy on the show said, "What is that noise?" I said, "There's a helicopter right over my house right now." So that's kind of interesting that's, they knew this Yellowstone thing was true. And the only time I ever ran into any issues was when I discussed Yellowstone on these podcasts. So,
Now, one thing.
Yeah.
One thing. Stop you there. I work on volcanoes.
Yeah,
as
I know.
a volcanologist. And what I'm going to tell you right now, guys, and a big shout out to Mike Poland. He is the Yellowstone Volcano Observer. He's a YVO, or Yellowstone Volcano Observatory scientist in charge. I want to give a big shout out to you. I hope we can have you on the show in the future, Mike Poland. Awesome guy. He's in charge of the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say this right now. Yellowstone is not going to blow up. It's not going to super erupt or anything like that. It doesn't even have the oomph to do anything. Now, his books talk about a catastrophic VEI-8 or even a VEI-9 eruption. See, 70,000 years ago in Sumatra, Indonesia, they had what's called Lake Toba, or Toba. Toba erupted so violently that it expelled, and a big thank you to Geology Hub, big shout out to them, 13,200 cubic kilometers of material, rock and glass. It was so bad, it created a genetic bottleneck in the human race. And it caused a good 12-year, 13-year volcanic winter. Now, Toba's caldera is probably around 943 square miles, where Yellowstone's is actually bigger. It's around almost 1,200. Now, Yellowstone's current caldera is 80 kilometers by 40 kilometers. And that was the very first one. The current one is 60 kilometers by 40 kilometers. Now, if Yellowstone were to happen again, like it happens in his book, we'd be talking about a catastrophic VEI-8 or VEI-7 or even a VEI-9 eruption. This is what we call a caldera forming eruption. It'd have to be one of the big boys, okay? Which would devastate the United States, bury it in 5 feet of, you could bury Texas in 5 feet of ash from Yellowstone's super eruptions. Now, Yellowstone has 3 super eruptions. 2.1 million years ago, the Huckleberry Tuff. That was 2,500 cubic kilometers of material. The Island Park caldera, that was around 280 to 380 cubic kilometers. Another really weak, it was a VEI-7, but still, I'd classify it as a super eruption. Now, Its most recent eruption, 640,000 years ago, was the Lava Creek Tuff, or Lava Creek eruption. That was 1,000 cubic kilometers. It blew out mountains, and that's the caldera you can go and see at Yellowstone today. Now, there's not only Yellowstone you have to be afraid of, okay? You have the Long Valley caldera in eastern California, which erupted around the same time as Yellowstone's last VEI-8 eruption. However, it was a VEI-7 eruption at around 700 to 800 cubic kilometers. It was devastating, just as bad as Yellowstone's big eruption. So, the Long Valley caldera can do just as bad as eruptions as Yellowstone's. So you could have two bad boys on the block. Now, the Valley's caldera, that's another one you have to worry about. But the one we are really afraid of and we're really watching right now is Kempe Fredgli in Italy. There's been a lot of UFO sightings over there because of the caldera over there. It is getting really bad there. It's having a lot of ground uplift, a lot of earthquakes. It is getting very close to having another eruption. Now, Go ahead.
You know what's interesting is that what you just said, whenever there's a natural disaster, there's always UFO sightings around it. You know, you have a volcano, you have an earthquake, whatever it might be, and there's a swarm of UFO sightings. You know, there were UFO sightings with Malaysia Flight 370. You know, it's just amazing how UFOs tend to show up when there's some sort of natural disaster. But, you know, one thing I want to say, Nick, is that by doing the research on these two books, I learned a lot about asteroids, about supervolcanoes, about all these different types of natural disasters, you know. So, and one of the other things I came across is that Russia, in its plans for World War III, if that would to ever happen, their plan is to hit Yellowstone with a nuclear missile to cause it to erupt. Now, it's either going to be the big one or it's just going to be a Hawaii type lava flow, you know, but that's part of their plan, not understanding that if you really had the big eruption, it's a nuclear winter, you're going to see, you know, 90% of the world's population die, because it's really not the eruption. It's when it blows all that dust and ash into the, you know, stratosphere, it comes down as acid rain. And that kills crops, that kills plankton. You lose 90% of sea life. You can't plant anything. And you know, I mean, the thought of Russia doing something like that, not understanding the effect, is ridiculous. But all right, you want to move on to the next books? Because I got a few more to go.
One second. Even if you, okay, it was the 1950s. The Hebgen Lake earthquake was a magnitude 7.5, and it was actually just as big as a nuclear weapon. Okay? That's our email right there. If you have any questions, go ahead and email us, technowarriorstv@gmail.com. Send us your questions and I'll answer them. Now, the earthquake was right next, or even right under the magma chamber, and it did absolutely zilch. Nothing. And it was just as big as a modern nuclear weapon. So, will Russia putting a nuclear weapon, or, you know, detonating a nuclear weapon over Yellowstone, on Yellowstone, ain't going to do a dang thing. It is going to do nothing, because the Hebgen Lake earthquake in the 1950s was just as big as a nuclear. The energy was just as bad as a nuclear weapon explosion. So I don't think that's going to do anything.
Okay. All right. Well, Nick, what happened after that, getting back to the books, is, you know, I published all of that. I got involved with MUFON. And like I started saying in the beginning, that this is the 15th anniversary of the Bucks County investigation. So that was 08, 09. Everything started to explode with TV interviews. And it's funny, that Bucks County investigation, I did 5 TV series where I was in it, and the Anderson Cooper Show. In April of 2012, I got on the Anderson Cooper Show for a 45-minute interview to defend 3 females. 1 was from Bucks County, 2 were from out west Kentucky. And it was a 45-minute interview. It was actually pretty cool, but I did all these TV shows. So we get to, I think it was January of 2012. I said, you know what? Nobody's ever done a book about Pennsylvania UFO cases. So I said, well, what am I going to call it? The show was UFOs Over Earth. So I called the show UFOs Over Pennsylvania, right?
Oh, that is
So
so cool.
yeah, that's where I got the idea. And there was no other UFO book about the state out there. So what you see is the UFO, and you see the three lights, which is what was described all across Pennsylvania. And here is the actual map of the cases we investigated. You could see all the ones in the Philly Bucks County area and then the Pittsburgh area, but it was primarily all across the southern part of the state was what the cases were. And we can talk about that on a different show and all of that. But what I did was I wrote the book, and in this book, I talked about Pennsylvania's history, the Kecksburg case, all the famous cases, Presque Island, Carbondale, and then I did it by town as much as I could. An interview with Bill Burns, who's a good friend of mine, Linda Moulton Howe, and then Linda gave me, I gave her all the information from the investigation. She wrote it up on her Earth files and then gave me permission to put it in the book. So there's like a, 50-page chapter there written by Linda, who's a journalist and a good writer. Then I got into all these other different things, people's individual cases. I got into something. This woman called me. She used to be with the NSA. She gave me all this information on human mummifications. So I wrote a chapter on that. And I actually did research and found bodies in trees all around the country that were mummified. I mean, it's the weirdest thing, Then we got into the Nephilim, underwater UFOs, Russian UFOs, all of that. But, this was so cool. I was able to put this book together for Pennsylvania UFOs and the history in the state. And a lot of the book was that big investigation that we had in Bucks County and actually across the state. Just real briefly, it started up in Lake Erie. I was getting cases where people saw a UFO coming out of Lake Erie, and I'm getting cases. The Ohio guys sent me East Lake, Ohio. I also had West Virginia, so I saw cases in Weirton, West Virginia, then across Pittsburgh. Then, like 15 minutes later, it's in the State College, in the middle of the state. And then 15 minutes after that, the UFO was seen in the Philadelphia Bucks County. So that's really how, all of that transpired. But, for Pennsylvania residents, really cool book that I wrote in 2012. So then what I did was, again, I got all these ideas. I said, well, I got to write this book about an asteroid strike now, So I wrote this book. You see the asteroid and the UFO approaching Earth, right? So Apophis 2029. It's about I kept reading about this, seeing it in the news and on television, a real asteroid in 2029 called Apophis. That's the Egyptian god of destruction. This asteroid is in Friday, April 13th, 2029, believe it or not. The asteroid is going to dip below our satellites and pass by. And it's a huge asteroid. It's like 3/4 of a mile. Originally, they thought it was about 1/4 of a mile, but now that they've updated it. And it's supposed to miss Earth, but, in space, if you hit a pebble, it could change the trajectory and move it 1,000 miles, whatever. So it could hit. So I decided to write this book on this asteroid strike. I believe this is the best book I've ever written. I really, as far as the 4 different storylines that you follow, and then there's like an X-Files, 2 investigators looking into this. It has a UFO ending to it. And again, so many things I learned from writing this book, but it'd be kind of interesting in 5-6 years what actually happens, on Friday the 13th, 2029, whether this asteroid hits us or it's just a near miss. And, they said if it's going to come where it grazes our gravity. So all
Mm-hmm.
the gravity has to do is nudge it in a hair. And the next time it comes back in 2036, it either strikes or completely misses us on the other side of the planet based on how much it was affected. So then I moved on to the next book, right? And this one I published March 17th of 2014. And cool background story on this one, you know. So I have the cover art. You see the thinker, the alien holding the human skull, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
thinker, you know. I got this one here. Hold on a second. You know, I'm looking at this that I have, right? You got the ape holding the human skull. So I'm looking at that and I'm saying, well, you know, there's one version of the thinker, and I get, of course, get the idea. Well, I need an alien holding the skull. That's, you know, and the title is An Alternative History of Mankind. So I have the cover art, I have the title, I have the cover art, and I just want to say the guy who did the artwork, I found the picture online, I contacted him, and I said to him, dude, you know, let me use this for the cover, it'd be good for you. Damiani was his name. And he lived in Brazil. So I had said to him, man, I'll let you come to our conferences for free. I'll comp you. He goes, well, I live in Brazil. So he says, but you can use it anyhow. You know, so I'm gonna give him a shout out here. Hold on a second. His name is Ralph Damiani in Brazil, and he let me use the artwork. So I got all of this, right? So now, and I believe in my mind, this is the best book I've written, even though well, excuse me, no. Apophis is the best book I've ever written. People have told me this is the best book, right? So it's an ancient alien type book. And I'll tell you how I ended up writing the book. I go to Roswell, New Mexico for the first time in, what's that, 2013, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in the, you know, it's like I go to a museum and you know, the museum needs to be updated, but they got the coolest library with every book and article published on UFOs. So that night I'm in the Chinese theater, Chinese restaurant eating. I see a woman, just strange looking, white hair, gray bloodshot eyes, very light skin. And I said, man, it kind of looks like a hybrid to me. You know, if there was a human alien hybrid, right? So now get this, Nick. The next morning, I'm leaving Roswell to drive to Santa Fe, right? I'm almost out of town on the main road. There she is. She's hitchhiking out of Roswell, carrying a purse or a bag. And I said to myself, how can that be? Like, how, you know, it's like 178 miles to Roswell, and you're hitchhiking. You don't have a gun. You don't have a bag or a purse or anything. So I don't pick her up because I just thought it was weird, you know. So I'm driving, and then boom, a light bulb goes off in my head. That's how you write the book. What you do in the book is you picked her up, right? You
Mm-hmm.
picked her up. She's an alien hybrid. She tells you the true history, the alternative history of mankind. So everything in the ancient alien, the UFO folklore, I put in this book as her and I discussed it on our 3-hour drive to Santa Fe. I think it was such a cool idea. And, you know, I think I got so much of the stuff right. But, you know, one of the things I put in the book, and it's something I believe, is that the alien and the human are in the same battle against evil, against Satan and the dark side. So I kind of argue a little in the book with her that, you know, it was ancient deities who built the pyramids and Baalbek and all of that. And, you know, it wasn't aliens that built all those old structures. And she was very afraid of those ancient deities because they're real. Just as God and Jesus is real, so is Satan and the fallen angels. So it was really fallen angels versus aliens and humans. And she's telling me the story. I think this is such a cool book. You know, I would say in my mind, Apophis #1, this one #2. UFO fans would love this one probably more than the Apophis book because that's more of a Irwin Allen disaster story. But, you know, that's the background behind that. And, you know, like people Friday I did yesterday I did Saturday I did a podcast, and the guy, I said, I own 4 of your books. I got one question to ask you. Did you really pick The Hitchhiker up? And I said, no, I didn't. But I was afraid to, actually, because it was weird. It's a desert from Roswell to Santa Fe, and you're hitchhiking, no bag, no nothing. So, it's kind of weird. So, Nick, I moved on from there. And I got to the point where it took me, 11 years to write that first book. And I got to the point where I pretty much put out 1 book a year for the next 9 or 10 years, let's say. So now I'm a big shot at MUFON. I'm a state director, but I'm also a multi-state director. I got 7 states. I've been on the Anderson Cooper show. I got most of the Northeast. I'm the state director for. And I'm doing conferences here. It's all across Pennsylvania, Erie, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. I'm on television. People know who I am, So we're into 2015. I published this book August of 2015, and Hangar 1 aired 2014, 2015. So it's right in the middle of the Hangar 1 thing. So I said, okay, I need to put everything I learned and everything I know about the UFO field into a book, and so I published this one, Case for UFOs. Now, there is a book out there called The Case for UFOs. I called it Case for UFOs. And what you see is Earth, and you see the of justice, the pendulum there, of the UFO outweighing Project Blue Book. I thought that was a cool idea of how to show the UFO evidence, because Project Blue Book was BS. It was blue BS is what it was, So I wrote this book in 2015. It's all the evidence and a lot of background stuff from Hangar 1 doing the TV show. So, I give you the Case for UFOs. I got 60 pages called Do You Know, Should You Know? All the facts and famous cases in chronological order, but a lot of facts about the UFO field. For example, like Kenneth Arnold wasn't the first one to call it a flying saucer. That was done by a guy in Dallas. Martin was his name, about 10 years earlier. But a lot of facts. My appearance on Anderson Cooper. Then I went into a lot of the cases, Battle of L.A., the 1952 over D.C. What I believe is that we've had a space program since at least 1980. What you're seeing right now is really our technology. Nazi UFOs, right? I put a theory out there that the Roswell crash was actually we got the technology from Germany at the end of World War II based on the Black Forest crash. I think it was in 1936 or 1939. And they didn't know what to do with the technology. There's a whole storyline to Nazi technology. And then and really what Roswell was our testing the technology, and that's what crashed there. And hold on a second. I said this at our Philly conference, and Nick Pope, a month later, writes an article how Roswell could have been American technology. He took my idea. He was a speaker. We were doing the Q&A at the end at the dinner. He took my idea and writes an article on it. But I got it documented in this book in 2015, so I wrote it first.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So what are you going to say?
So that's why I raised my hand. Now you were you were talking about Hangar 1. You were talking about the Glock, the Bell.
Yeah.
It was actually one of your episodes.
Yeah, that's Nazi technology. That's what I'm telling you. What happened was there was a crash in the Black Forest. You can look it up. The Nazis got it. Hitler got it. He's actually probably before he's actually the Nazis, right? So they didn't know what to do with it, right? So. And this is true. They are trying to develop this, right? The Glock, they're doing experiments by compressing red mercury, spinning it and compressing it. The thing levitates off the ground. It also throws off a lot of radiation. And then, you got the Hanabu series of these, they coming out with jet engines. I'm telling you, they were 6 months away from winning World War II. And it was really They're scientists that sabotaged Hitler. They could have developed the atomic bomb before we did, but it was a couple of scientists in particular deliberately didn't use heavy water for the atomic bomb and sabotaged it, But we got all of this, we got all these scientists, we got all this stuff from Germany, and that became NASA, absolutely. Werner von Braun, all of them became NASA with these scientists. They were the German Nazis. The guys who built the concentration camps, now they're over here building NASA and rocket technology. But that's really how that went. So in this book, I tell you everything you want to know about UFOs, what happened under certain presidents, my putting together 2 symposiums, 2014 MUFON Symposium, which I ran, stories on Captain Ruppelt, Morris Jessup, Frank Scully, the 1973 UFO wave. I attended the citizens hearing in D.C. when Stephen Bassett ran that, the Hudson Valley case, all. I'm telling you, this book, and I even said to the heads at MUFON, they have a field investigators manual and I'm on their board at this time. From 2011 to 2014, I was an interim board member. And I said, you got your field investigators manual, but what do they know about the history of UFOs? So I said, this book, you should really, not make it mandatory, but suggest that they buy it. Of course, I'm trying to increase my sales, but, if you read this book, you'd know everything you needed to know on the background history of the UFO field, And I did, at the time back then, they had like on their website, you can purchase books. So different MUFON people had books. So it was listed there as a book you could buy. But I really felt that the UFOs the case for UFOs should have been like a training manual for new UFO people. Investigators, and I still think that. So now, so I've done all this stuff on the UFOs. We're into the Hangar 1, and a funny thing happens on the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
We do the season 1, 2014. All right, 2015, we're doing season 2, but in 2014, something shows up in my house. Now, some people said it was an alien. I felt it was absolutely malevolent. My daughter said it was malevolent. She didn't live with me, but they came visit. And there's something in my house. So my attention now turns like away from the UFO field, or at least questioning the UFO field, in that I believe the UFO in the sky is different and needs to be investigated differently than the alien contact and abduction that happens at night, let's say. So with MUFON, mostly what I did was I looked at what was in the sky, because it was a scientific investigation of UFOs, right? Mm-hmm. So it was my friend Fred Saluga who actually said to me in 2014, John, you have to look at the alien abduction. MUFON had its own alien abduction team. So I never really looked at abductions, So it was no sooner than I started looking at the abductions. And we were into season 2 of Hangar 1. I get this thing in my house. And we'll talk about this in another interview, but I felt it was a malevolent entity. Whether that's a demon or some interdimensional thing. So now I'm changing my whole view to looking at demonology, hauntings, exorcism. Is there any relationship there to the UFO field? And, I can get into more stuff. Shadow people being seen at the MUFON Symposium, shadow people seen at UFO conferences. One guy passed away at the conference. We'll talk about all that at a later date. But what happens is I then write this book, and it was in 2016. Yeah, September 11th of all dates, 2016, I published this book, The String Theory of the Unexplained. And you see kind of an upside down cross, the haunting
of John Ventre. Ladies and gentlemen,
yeah,
get ready for this, because this is one of the interviews we're going to be doing with John Ventre. It is going to be scary as can be. you're going to want to wear some adult depends diapers because that this suit is so scary, it's going to make you crap your pants. The
Yeah.
haunting was so spooky and scary. It makes the Nun 2 look weak. It makes the Conjuring series look weak. What John Ventre went through will make you poop your pants.
Yeah.
Also, we actually interviewed an exorcist, and a big shout out to Salad Veng. You can check his interview out as well, the exorcist interview of Salad Veng, where we talk about some of the exorcisms he has done, and it even shows us some footage of a big shout out to Ruben Martinez for allowing this of his exorcism. And we're actually, hopefully we can refilm this interview down the line, the exorcism of Ruben Martinez. And a big shout out to Bob Larson Ministries. Bob Larson is a world-renowned exorcist, and we're going to have him on the show talking about his Exodemus streaming service. And also, we'll be doing an exorcist interview with Bob Larson. So you want to stay tuned for that one as well, because he also has some awesome books, like Jezebel, Defending Your Number One Spiritual Enemy. Also, he has a book about exorcisms and, other paranormal stuff. But the Strange Series, this thing, it's an awesome book. If you love scary crap, you're going to want to get this. Because this book it's spooky season. It is perfect for spooky season. It's Halloween time. It's getting ready to be Halloween time. So it's spooky season. So make sure you get, what's the book's name?
The String Theory of the Unexplained. But, I would say also, I have a YouTube channel with 116 videos, but there's two on there in particular. One is The Haunting of John Ventre. The other, I think it's called The String Theory of the Unexplained, where I talk about other famous UFO cases that I don't think were UFO. I think they were demonic encounters, And there's also one that you watched, the My Haunted Houses, right?
Yes,
you saw
I watched that
one
several times.
Yeah, I've tried to condense everything into one like 40-minute, 35-minute video, all three houses I've lived in the haunted activity. But it's when I start the book off, the first chapter is called The Ufologist. I don't know if you can see that. I'm kind of blocking myself.
Yeah.
But it's a screenplay that what happened to me. Think about this. I'm an accidental UFO investigator because I don't know anything about UFOs. I'm a horror fan, and all of a sudden I get involved in UFOs, become the state director, get on UFOs Over Earth, get on the Anderson Cooper show, get on Hangar One. I'm like probably in MUFON in 2014, 15. I'm probably the face of MUFON with Hangar One. I think no doubt in 2015 as a state director in the shows, all of that. And a funny thing happens along the way. I come under what I believe was demonic attack. Although there were a few things that happened that in the UFO field, you would say that was an abduction. That was an encounter with the aliens. But I also in this book, I have a chapter, Did You Know? So it's the, do you know, should you know? And it's like 35 pages of paranormal stuff. Facts I discovered, do you know, should you know? But in this book, what I also do is I write a lot of chapters questioning whether the alien abduction of people was demonic or not. I put the deceptive history of mankind. So that's kind of a takeoff on the alternative history. There's a chapter, the deceptive history, because I think these ancient deities have had a huge influence in our society and in old society of Egypt, et cetera, and I just go through my true paranormal and a whole bunch of different things, telling people about what is really going on. And I look at a whole bunch of cases and I said, I got news for you. Betty Andreeshen, Carla Turner, these were not alien abduction cases. And there's about 6 famous UFO cases that I take apart and I show the markers of alien abduction of the markers of demonic infestation in their alien abduction. So they were not dealing with that. But the other thing I want to do right now, I finished my final book, which is really number 10. It's called The Ufologist, the first chapter in the book, The Ufologist. And it's actually it's on Amazon right now. I didn't do the printed copies yet because there's one thing I want to add to it, and that's a picture of me being knighted in Europe next month as a Knights Templar. And I think that is all part of this journey I went on, and I want to put a picture of that in the book. But it's a shorter book, about 180 pages, that doesn't have all the other stuff in it, just my haunted encounters, UFO, and just mine in particular, and how it brought me on this trip. From, if you think about it, I went from end time prophecy, right, which is kind of religious. I had not been to church in 20 years after I got divorced, but then I wrote this end time prophecy book, which brought me back to looking at religion. I went on to UFOs, right? Then I came under attack for 22 months. And it actually took 2 exorcists to get this thing out of my house. Then I write the string theory about, angels and fallen angels and my attack, and then the UFO. And then I'm now becoming a Knights Templar who defends Christianity and Jesus, and I'm being knighted next month in Northern Ireland. So, it's kind of an interesting way that this whole thing transpired, but I think it was meant to go that way. And we'll talk in other episodes about the PA case, the UFO cases, and then my coming under attack, which, some people say, no, John, that's an alien. I saw it one time. All right. But I won't get into that now. I had 2 out-of-body experiences, just some really lucid, weird stuff. So then, I keep saying I'm done writing. Yeah, I'm done writing. So we get to, so now I write 2 more books that are not UFO or paranormal related, right? So I get to 2020, all this COVID stuff, everything going on, right? So I decide I'm going to write a book. It's going to be a novel, though, but in the book, first half of the book, I'm going to give you the history of viruses, the Spanish flu, all of that, right? But then the second half of the book is a prequel to Apophis 2029. I took the same characters, the 5 or 6 from the Apophis book. I put them in this book, the Wuhan Conspiracy, right? So this is 9 years earlier, based in 2020. You see the map of the U.S. and China. It originates out of China, across to the whole world of the COVID virus. And in it, now get this, we shut down the world, U.S., March 13th of 2020. I published this book March 15th of 2020. I already had it done, right? 2 days after we shut down, it's published on Amazon. You can look it up. You'll see the date there, March 15th, 2020. So, and I'll tell you what happened with this. So the book is up. It's up for a week. All of a sudden, the book's taken down. And I don't get any reason from Amazon Books as to why my book was taken down, right? So I emailed them. They said the answer back to me was, we basically can't tell you. So I went back into my book and I put their response. See, it says censored, banned from bookstores. I have their response to me that they can't tell me why it was taken down. But I know why it was taken down, because President Trump was talking about the Wuhan virus, the China virus. People thought that was racist, or they were just attacking Trump, basically. It didn't matter what he said, that he got attacked. So they saw Wuhan Conspiracy. They took it down. And I said to him, guys, this is a prequel to my other novel. It's really a novel, History of Viruses, but it's a novel. How do you take it down? Wouldn't give me an answer, right? They kept it down from March 23rd of 2020 to October of 2020. They released it about 2 weeks before the November election in 2020. And the way I know it was the title, I said, okay, you want to play games? I took the book, I republished it with a different cover on it and a different name. And if you look at the poster I sent you that's on here. I guess somewhere people can see it. You'll see in the bottom right-hand corner, I have a book with a surgeon on the cover called the Coronials, A New Generation for Coronavirus, the Coronials. And it's everyone born after 2020. Instead of millennials, I call them coronials for coronavirus. I thought that was really creative, the coronials,
Dude, that is
and
creative.
yeah, it's like millennials. Well, they're coronials. They're born because after everything has changed since 2020. So what happened was all the pages in there are in the book. It's published. The coronials, they don't take that one down. So it wasn't the content. It was the cover
name.
title. It was the name, and it was because of Trump that they took the thing down. But I thought that was so cool. You got the cover, you got China, the way the virus spread, all of that. But I got it. What's weird though is I got everything right in the book. I mean, I said China, this was engineered, and at the time nobody was saying that. I said it was engineered in their lab in Wuhan. They deliberately released it. They, it's funny. They have the Chinese New Year. And they didn't say anything to the world until 5 million people showed up, visited China, and went home with the virus. Then all of a sudden they told everybody about it. It was starting to come out in November, December, January, February. But I said it was their way of getting back at Trump. I believe that the Democrats had a hand in that too, because they could not beat Trump at that time. And I think that whole virus thing is a shame to put people through that and kill thousands of people around the world so you can win an election. I think that was all part of it. So I moved into politics and a little bit of, the prequel to the other book. So if you read Apophis, you got to read this one too.
Now, I do got a question. Sorry for interrupting. But
yeah, no problem.
You ever heard of, so on our channel, we have a thing called the Conspiracy Corner. And our first episode was with Bart Sabrell. You ever heard of him?
No.
He's a conspiracy theorist. He talks about the fake moon landings.
Okay.
He talks about other stuff, but he also talks about Planet X, Wormwood. What is your opinion on Planet X, the planet that's supposed to hit the Earth in the end times?
I don't know about. Well, the Bible, Revelation, everything says that we're going to be hit by it's either a satellite, could be a planet, an asteroid, or a comet called Wormwood. That's the name, probably what you just said, Wormwood. And in my book, Apophis, that's the name of the asteroid. Well, no, it's actually Apophis 2020. Apophis is the asteroid that hits us. But I got the idea from Wormwood, and I quote that in the book. So those things are all possible. I have my opinion on a lot of that stuff, but it's all possible. We're not gonna know until it actually happens.
Well, that's why NASA did with NASA's SpaceX did the DART program, where they crashed a small satellite into an asteroid, Didymos, to change its orbit and change its trajectory.
They're doing that for the Apophis asteroid. If a planet is going to hit us, you got no chance of deflecting it. It's not going to happen. But they did that, and that's actually in my book too. The things that I wrote, 10 years ago, the technology they're working on. One was to crash into it and kind of nudge it a hair so it misses us, and that's what we just did. And the other, there's others. You could put a tugboat on it where you land something and it keeps the engines running, trying to push it a hair, because that's all you got to do is push it a hair. By the time it makes its 7-year rotation, it's far away. So, really interesting stuff there. So I wrote that, and then I said, I'm done, right? Well, I'm not done. Just like I'm putting out the ufologist book. It's already out there, but I don't have the hardcover one written. So then during COVID lockdown, I'm reading, right? So I think I get the Wall Street Journal at the time. And they start talking about this 1619 project, right? Which I'm sure you heard about the 1619 project and how America was born for slavery and all of this stuff. And I said, wait a second, that's partially true, but it's not true the way they're presenting it, right? So, and I knew about the history of the Irish, and so what I did was I wrote this book. The 1625 project a challenge to the New York Times, with our Constitution there. But so I wrote that book. And what I did was I looked at what was said in the 1619 Project. I looked up all the falsehoods, and it's not really my ideas. It's what other think tanks said about the 1619 Project not being true. And then I gave the history of slavery. Slavery has basically gone back to, as soon as you had a couple of thousand humans, they were enslaving people because it's cheap labor. It's always been that way for the last 6,000 years. And I talked about the Irish slavery, which very few people know about. Ireland was Catholic, England was Protestant. And because Ireland was Catholic, they killed, there's only 3 million people on Ireland, right? So the King of England kills 500,000. 500,000 leave for other countries in Europe, and 340,000 are enslaved into the West Indies and America. And the West Indies, they were actual slaves. In America, they were indentured servants. So basically, half the population of Ireland is wiped out by the King of England because they're Catholic. No other reason, because they're Catholic. So, then I go into a few other things. So, the last two books, I got into politics. I got into, the history of viruses, the history of slavery. I wrote what I think is the truth about slavery. So, and like I said, the last book, which to me is the most significant, The Ufologist. I even put in the book, the first chapter is a screenplay. If you were to take my experiences and want to make a movie or a made-for-TV show out of it, I wrote it up as, here's your storyline, with some exaggerations, because that's what they do in a storyline, movie. And I said, here it is. And next, chapter 2 is going to be the true story, which is really in a diary format by year of everything that happened. And that book is out right now on Amazon Kindle. The printed copy's not out yet, but it will be in November. So, that's my books. I think it's a very interesting story, how I went from end time prophecy. I didn't know anything about UFOs, and I became a top 10 in the world subject matter expert on UFOs, up there with Stanton Friedman, Richard Dolan. I think, maybe
Joe
not
Rogan?
the same level. What was that?
Including Joe Rogan?
Yeah, well, here's the funny thing about Joe Rogan, and that's in my book, the String Theory book. Joe Rogan years ago was a big critic of UFOs. And I put an interview he did there where he said everyone who believes in UFOs are either drunk, doing drugs, or dreaming, that it's not real. But then 8 years later, Joe Rogan sees the light. There's money to be made in this and millions of followers. And now Joe Rogan is this big UFO proponent. And same with Fox News. Fox News talks about UFOs. MSNBC, CNN, they don't really talk about UFOs. Fox News does. And all of a sudden, the Pentagon now has given it legitimacy. So on one hand, I'm happy they did that because I'm not being criticized anymore. That's a UFO nut. And when I ran for governor, when I ran for county commissioner here twice, that came up. Oh, he's a UFO nut. I'm telling you, I lost a lot of votes because I was involved in the UFO field, but not anymore because it's been legitimized. But my thing is, let's see, the government covered this up for 80 years since the Battle of LA in 1942. 81 years, and now all of a sudden they're telling you it's real. I would be very skeptical of that. I don't trust them one bit on anything they say. So that's my books. That's how I got involved. I think it's a tremendously interesting story. And if you read The String Theory or The Ufologist, you'll get a much better understanding of the trip I took, which I think was meant to be, and bring me back to religion.
So where can people reach you at?
Yeah, well, if you go to johnventre.com, you'll get all of on there. There's some links to some of my TV appearances, and links to my books. It says books. You can click the link. One is for Barnes and Noble, one's for Amazon. Takes you right to the page, right? But more importantly, too, right in the middle, it says free videos. if you click on that, it takes you to my 116 lectures, and you get to see that. So johnventre.com is the easiest place to locate me. And if you just go on YouTube and put my name in or whatever, you'll come up with me. So
Yeah, and then I'll put your I'll put the your YouTube channel in the description as well.
okay,
Also, big shout out to you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I would say you're probably the biggest UFO person that has come on onto our show.
thanks.
Like you're a multi-state director for MUFON, so get ready for another MUFON type interview. The former, it's going to be it'll be like what we did with Earl Grey Anderson.
Earl Grey, yeah.
But instead of just state director, it will say multi-state director, and it'll say former multi-state director.
Yeah, you know what's interesting too. Let me just add, I retired from MUFON after 20 years. It was 1998. I think it was 2018. So I always intended to retire on my 20th anniversary, but never intended to stay that long. So I've been retired five years, and it was really my encounters that made me look more at demonology. I believe I could be an exorcist right now. I know that much about that field and demonology. Not that I'd want to. I don't want to encounter this stuff, and I don't want to bring it home with me, which is a mistake by a lot of ghost hunters. But yeah, we'll do that too. But this was a great show, Nick, and I'm glad we filmed it. So send me a link when it's ready. Yeah,
dude, it's gonna be awesome because, like, of course, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you check out our brand new Facebook. It's like the same as our very old Facebook, the one that was hacked and everything. But our new Facebook is pretty much the same. It works a lot better. It doesn't crash or anything like that. Our new Facebook is really, really nice. It works a lot better. This will also go to Rumble as well too. It's also, of course, we'll also put the little thumbnail on Twitter. We'll go to Gab. It will go to Truth Social. It will go to every single social network you can think of. It's going to go into a bunch of Discord servers. Go everywhere, and make sure to because really, if you like this video, you know what to do. You hit that like button if you like this video. Hit that dislike button if you did not like this video. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, John Ventre, for coming on to the show. And if you adored this author interview, all you have to do is strangle that subscribe button, slap that like button in the face, and pow, right in the kisser. Thank you guys so much. And ladies and gentlemen, the next interview from John Ventre will be the haunting of John Ventre. It will be a paranormal interview. So make sure you grab a nice, and if you're in the New Mexico area on Holloman Air Force Base, be sure you check out Irie Coffee, Teas, and Bobas. Big shout out to Gwendolyn Newhart and Christopher Allen. Irie Coffee, Teas, and Bobas, Irie Place is our sponsor. And a big shout out to them. So make sure you check out the Technowarriors TV Boba with over 728 milligrams of caffeine. That's right. It's insanely powerful. Also, make sure to check out johnventre.com and check out his books. We'll have everything where you can find those books as well, too. Especially the Apophis 2029. If you love asteroids or anything like Armageddon type stuff, you want to read the Apophis 2029 book. Also, if you love doomsday theories, if you love, like anything that's end times related, you should check out his two books, Day After 2012 and the 2012 End Time Prophecies. They talk a lot about super volcanoes, and it really goes into what Yellowstone would do if it really were to have a super volcanic eruption. And yet I know that Yellowstone is not going to erupt because it's not going to, it doesn't have enough power. The magma chambers are mainly solid. You're going to need at least you're going to need 50% or more to have a super eruption. And you're going to need enough eruptible magma. I'd say you need 240 cubic miles of, magma. You're going to need a bunch of magma to make it go boom, boom.
Yeah, but it's interesting, Nick, is my books covered UFO, end time prophecy, UFOs, and demonology. It's got a complete circle.
Would you consider yourself a demonologist?
Yes. Yeah, I know a lot. Anything I get involved in, I become a subject matter expert. I've read all the books by Malachi Martin, Gabriel Amorth, some haunted stories, but I got personal experience, you know. I mean, as you know, probably I could say I never actually saw a UFO. I saw something in my house, you know, as a being. We'll debate what that was, but yeah,
Hmm.
I've gone full gamut and back. I'm a reborn Christian now. I go back to
So
church because it was important. I think to save my soul was to go back to church after 20 years, and that's why I'm being knighted as a Knights Templar very shortly.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a little synopsis of what you're going to see in the next interview next Tuesday, okay, or next week. So, you want to make sure you subscribe to our channel, okay? John Ventre is also going to share this everywhere he can in all of his groups and everything because it's going to be amazing. You really won't want to miss this, especially because it's Halloween season now. So, if you love spooky, demonic ghost stories, the Haunting of John Ventre is going to be the interview for you. Ladies and gentlemen, I also like to thank Bob Larson for giving me a shout out in a couple of his live exorcism videos. A while back ago, when during COVID, we actually asked him a couple questions. He even gave me a shout out, and then we just barely gave him a. We actually asked a question: "Have you ever seen anything like that?" He said, "Yes." That's, ladies and gentlemen, I'm super excited to have Bob Larson on the show in the future. It is going to be absolutely phenomenal. We're going to have him talk about his Exodemus streaming service, which you can sign up for today. Any new subscribers will actually get this brand new documentary, and you can see a bunch of live exorcisms there, which is really spooky. Just make sure you're wearing a pair of Depends adult diapers, because they'll make you crap your pants. Now, John Ventre, would you consider yourself like a full blown demonologist? Because we actually did a interview with demonologist. His name is let's see, can't remember. It's Virtue or Avenue. Actually, it's Avenue. The terrifying demonology interview of Avenue. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see this terrifying demonologist interview of John Ventre. So this guy is going to be on our show several times. So we have the Haunting of John Ventre. We have the UFO sightings of John Ventre. We have the MUFON interview of John Ventre. And so that's going to be, I'd say, 3 interviews. On top of this one,
Yeah,
this makes 4.
should be three would be
Yeah,
good.
and this would be our 4th. This would be number 1, but we have 3 more others. This is going to be really, really awesome, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be amazing. So if you're a UFO fan, paranormal fan, make sure you subscribe to Techno Warriors TV. Also give John Ventre a subscribe and like. Check out his videos. He talks about all the stuff we talked about in this interview on his channel. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week for the Haunting of John Ventre.
Thank you.